Alright guys, it's Friday. Let's get into it. I have a wonderful story for us today. Today we're going to be reviewing To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. And we're going to be reviewing La Columbe coffee. It's oat milk. It's oat milk vanilla latte. And I've never had this before and we're going to try it. So without further ado, let's sip some coffee and get into a story. This is more expensive, so I'm expecting a better quality coffee than what I normally drink. This tastes super creamy. It says frothy and delicious. I agree with that. I think this is a very quality drink. If you mix this with some ice in a blender or threw it on top of ice, this is comparable to anything you'd get at Tim Hortons or Starbucks. I think it could stand a little bit more coffee in there, but I think that this is very delicious. Slightly sweet. It's not overly sweet, so I'm enjoying it. Very good. Now for our story. This is Christopher Paolini's brainchild. He worked on this series. He said he had got the idea in 2006 or 2007, and he'd really started working on it because of a dream he got in 2013, I believe. And so he had worked on this novel and kind of the fractal verse for 10 years. And what is the product of it? How do I feel? Just first impression. It's definitely thick. This is more of the newsstand version, so it had like almost 1,100 pages, whereas I think the regular novel has like 800 pages or something. It was like a 32-hour audiobook. Some of that is actually an appendix. It's not really a full... The appendix has a lot of explanation of the scientific details of some of the stuff that he was working on, which we'll explain a little bit more about later. On first impressions, we have this girl who's what's called a xenobiologist. She is a biologist who examines alien life forms. She basically gets on spaceships and goes to other planets and analyzes all the biota that's there. I thought that was a super cool character to start with. And what happens is she gets infected by what's like a symbiote. It's like a black substance that's alien that attaches itself to her. I'm not going to make this a spoiler heavy video, but essentially a lot of bad things start happening and she has to correct some of her mistakes, and also she has to figure out how to survive with this thing attached to her. And then along the way you start meeting all these really interesting characters, and it's her journey through the stars and fight to survive type of thing. And also it's a novel that explores what it means to be human in outer space and what is the psychology behind these characters who are so far away from their families and whatnot. I thought this novel was super interesting, fascinating, super fascinating. He created characters that were fun and funny in here, some that were very unique, but I think my favorite character was Grigorovich, and Grigorovich is what's called a ship mind. So to some extent, spaceships in this fractal verse universe, they found that it was better, instead of making a completely artificial AI, to take an organic matter already like our brain that has processing abilities and to kind of just beef it up so that way it could be an ultra processor of complex tasks to handle things intelligently. So ship minds start with basically a human mind that kind of evolves and gets really big until it can handle all the operations of a spaceship, and that is the main control system of a ship. I thought that was super brilliant. I thought that the character, the main ship mind that we deal with called Grigorovich, is the best character in the novel. I felt like that was one of those things that I'm not a big science fiction buff, but I hadn't seen that anywhere else. I thought that it was wonderful. I think that made the series stand out, and I think that's my favorite part of this entire novel. And it was always interesting to see what the ship mind was going to say, because their ship mind is kind of psychologically unstable. And there's a lot of other ideas such as near scent and far scent, that alien life can communicate with scent, because scent is highly connected with memories too, so I thought that was very genius. There's a lot of gems in this book. Despite the fact that it's very verbose, it's very long, it is a fantastic novel. The only thing I have to compare it to is something like Hyperion, which I don't know if he took that into account or he read it after. And I firmly consider Hyperion to be like it's a classic. I have never read anything like that or heard of anything like that, and it's by far one of the best series, if not the best series I've ever read. So something like To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, which is very much in that bracket of a space opera in between the stars, it's kind of has big shoes to fill, you know what I mean? And I think it did its job. I feel like that's a big thing to say, but I think it did a really great job. I don't think that this book is better than the Hyperion series, but I'm having to consider book 1 and 2 of Hyperion one book, because the first book I got really mad about, if you guys watch the reviews, because it just had a really cut off ending. I think that was a better series in general, but To Sleep in a Sea of Stars is very different, and I still think that it's up to that caliber, and I still think that it was great. Everyone says a common theme, which is very true. He did not need to make it this long. That was excessive. I don't know if we should blame him or his editor for that. There was a perfect example where Hua Jung, the character that's in charge of the spaceship, the Wallfish, and well, she's in charge of the physical machine aspect of it and taking care of it, and the ship captain, his name is Falcone, they get into an argument where he wants her to leave where she is and to fix a part of the ship immediately, and she doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to leave. So what happens is we get into this dialogue where they go back and forth of her saying no and him saying, no, you have to go now or I'll fire you. It's so verbose. It's completely excessive. They talk too much about this. It could have been said by the author, this went back and forth for a while. And that one sentence would have explained a good page of dialogue. You know what I'm saying? So it was a major factor in a lot of people finishing this book, when it is so good that he kind of just shot himself in the foot by making it too big. Another example of that is the escape. There's a point where the crew needs to escape from somewhere, and the characters completely hamper the story and slow the story down because they are explaining too much of the scientific and technical aspects of how they're going to get things done. As a reader, that made me feel alienated, that made me zone out and just like not be invested in the story. I'm not a scientist, and those sorts of things, I can go to the back of the appendix, because he did have a point in the back of the appendix that explained all the way that certain things worked scientifically. Excessive amount of detail of how certain things work in the appendix, and although I like that part of the appendix, there was a good portion of this novel that could have just had an asterisk there or referenced in the appendix. You already had an appendix. Why are you telling us in the story how things work? It's too excessive. So a lot of people were upset about that, and I'm not upset, but it was kind of like, you know, like I said earlier, he shot himself in the foot on that one. I think this novel was poetic. I thought it was gorgeous. I thought the visuals were beautiful. I feel like Paulini is a out-of-the-box writer. He thinks out of the box. He is an exceptional writer. He makes things so beautiful. That's why if you have a science fiction setting or you have a fantasy setting, he is such a good writer for it, because he can paint a picture. The novel came out in 2020. It did well. It was a New York Times bestseller. But the reviews were a mixed bag, partly because of the length, partly because it was too much internal dialogue from the character. But at the end of it, this is an exceptional novel. It's really, really good. What happened to me is that I knew I wanted to get this review out by Friday. And because I don't have an excess amount of time to read a paperback in the evening, I only have like maybe 2 hours to read in the evening. But in the daytime when I'm walking around or when I'm cleaning, it's easy to read an audiobook, or when like I'm going on a walk or something. So I downloaded the audiobook and I'm able to compare the differences, and I feel like the audiobook does not do it justice. Jennifer Hale is the audiobook actress that read the book, and he was super geeked about it. At the end of the audiobook, you have a 25-minute audio bonus that's Christopher Paolini and Jennifer Hale having a conversation. That's a really cool bonus feature if you download the audiobook. Certain things aren't translated very well in the audiobook. I think that this is one to sit down and read slowly. I feel like when you have scenes where alien life forms are communicating with the humans, things can get very confusing, and having an audiobook explain it to you doesn't really do it justice. I preferred the hard copy a million times over. I think to get the most out of this series, get the hard copy. Yeah, so let's get to our final thoughts. This book gets 5 stars. There's no way not to give it 5 stars. I could take off a star because it was too verbose, or it was too lengthy, or because of blah, 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 or because of whatever. But you're trashing a great novel. He put so much effort into it, and it shows. Yeah, maybe it was wordy, but the problem with that is even though it's wordy, it was better to give a little more detail than a little less in this circumstance, because this was awesome. Funny enough, during the Fractal Noise meet and greet, someone asked Paolini if he would become a ship mind, and he said yes. He said it would allow him to make books faster, to think faster and make books faster, so he said yes. So I thought that was cool. Pick this up, give it a read, tell me what you think. If you're not one for reading all these pages, do the audiobook. It's super relaxing. Jennifer Hale's voice is a little too airy and sultry for me. I like something that's a little bit more direct when it's an audiobook, because it imparts the information, I think, a little more clearer. She's definitely more of an actress when it comes to that, and there's a lot of emotion in her voice. But she did a very good job. I enjoyed it. If we're comparing audiobook to hard copy, I'm going to be fair and say that the audiobook gets a 4. For the bonus feature and for the ease of use, an audiobook is a great way to go, but I would not choose that. I would choose the hard copy. The hard copy gets a 5 if we're just grading the format. So yeah, if you guys did read this series, comment down below, what did you think of it? And if you're a frequent sci-fi reader, did you feel like this was a win for sci-fi? Do you feel like it was a great sci-fi series? How does it grade for average regular sci-fi readers? That's what I want to know. I loved it. I will read it again. I am looking forward to reading it again here on my vacation coming up soon. As for this, I really like this, actually. This is 4 stars. I feel like it's been a while. Has it been a while since I gave a drink 4 stars? This gets 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. And it's a good quality drink. I like oat milk, though. I'm a little partial because I do like the flavor of oat milk. So I recommend this highly. I think it's a good thing to pick up. The price kind of sucks on it, but if you don't want to go through like a Tim Hortons line or something, you could pick this up or make a drink at home. This is a great thing to drink also if you're not wanting as much sugar as some drinks have. So 4 stars. I will be reviewing Fractal Noise in our next video, and this is his newest to come out. It came out just, I think, last week. Goodreads had a major controversy about this book. This artwork was produced by AI, and people were rating this book 1 star before it even came out. And then to counterbalance it, people were rating it 5 star, even though they hadn't read it, just to balance out the ratings. So right now on Goodreads, it's hard to gauge what people are really thinking about it, because the ratings are so messed up because people were just talking about the cover art as opposed to what the story was. So we're going to review it, we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion on that one. So thank you guys for joining me, and a special thank you to Christopher Paolini, just because that meet and greet was so informative and informed me a lot about this series so I can make a better video on it. So I don't know if he'll see it, probably not, but thank you, Christopher Paolini, for just always staying up to date and being available to your fans and giving them the information that they need for your work. Because some authors just kind of hide underneath a rock, you know? With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I look forward to sipping a beverage and getting into a new story with you soon. Take care.